it's pointless to talk about Republicans and Democrats. It's working for the same corporatocracy, and this new alignment across the earth between Beijing and Washington, it's one corporatocracy, and it's merging into a singular power, financed by Vatican money, right? And its Ninth Circle associates.
Yeah, I agree with that. Why is Trump doing all this posturing with China, threatening tariffs every week and all this stuff? Is that just bluster?
He's read Sun Tzu in The Art of War. This is how he got ahead in the corporate world. You create an impression that you want your duped followers to believe in. Well, you're making a deal over here, right? It's the oldest game in the world. There are no different. It's like going into court and saying my lawyer is going to defend me. No, they serve the court system. They don't serve you at all. They get together and have drinks after. So do these guys. I mean, so let's just drop the blinders off our eyes and look at the system going on, and not simply the hand puppets they put in front of your face, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because China just seems to be absolutely thriving right now, and wiping out a lot of, or threatening to wipe out a lot of European and US business interests, including the car. It seems like the Chinese are taking over the car manufacturing in particular.
It's going to be, in less than 50 years, China will be the dominant power in the world, with its American fief, Where Russia comes into this is interesting, because they're kind of the wild card. They're trying to play both sides right now. But as part of this assault, any notion of democracy, the rule of law, common law, it's going to be as exterminated as indigenous children, right? And that's why it's so important. And part 3 of this is what we are hoping to do now, based on this, in terms of pulling people out, reclaiming our power in the ground. We've talked about that before, but it's all the more important right now. Okay, so that's the Vancouver Club in Vancouver. It's the corner of Burrard and Hastings, and it's at the epicenter of the demonic energy in Vancouver. It's right above the old tunnel system. Vancouver is a recent city. It's from the 1880s. It burned down in 1886 and they rebuilt it. But there were these old smuggling tunnels from the waterfront, which is just behind the Vancouver Club. The whole Vancouver waterfront is there. And the tunnels lead there and all over. This is where the ceremony was shut down. It's in a building. They were happening in 2 areas. Up on the top floor there was the snuff film rooms. And beneath that, about 2 doors down, 2 levels down, is where they do the Ninth Circle ceremonies. And go east of there, so to the right, you go about a mile to the Vancouver waterfront. And that's where, on Ballantyne Pier, is where all these ships come in with false hulls, where they do a lot of the human trafficking. They just put them into the tunnel system, and they're fodder for whatever you want, right? So, I mean, that's one of the scenes of the crime.
We've got this lady here.
That's the spot of the second ritual. That's Tos Nianhos. She was raised in the Ninth Circle, had to kill her older sister, as did the father. And that's the site. And this is actually a picture I took of her. That was in 2010. And it's right near that forest near Cauvin, Couvin. You look it up in South Brussels. It's on the exact latitude of the Vancouver Club. And that was a funeral pyre they created where they burned children alive as part of the ceremony.
There's another picture of her.
This is interesting. Oh, I forgot to read I talked about the Ninth Circle latitude, and this is in Maastricht, Holland. Now, Maastricht is the oldest Catholic church outside Italy. And we believe this is where the Ninth Circle began. Their first ceremonies were right there. The Maastricht Treaty that created the European Union. Maastricht is a key energy point. This Ninth Circle latitude runs from Vancouver to Red Deer, Alberta, which is where a lot of the MK Ultra experiments happened in the mental hospitals and military bases there in Red Deer. Thunder Bay, chief center for post-war Nazi medical research in Canada. Isle of Wight and Stonehenge, you know about those places, right? Isle of Wight is a systematic center. Maastricht and Brussels, which are on the same link. Prague and Krakow. They're all on the same latitude. I've been to all of those places except Krakow, and they all have the same energy. It's this kind of, I can't put it into words because people often tell me you can't put the sacred or the profane into words. There's no language for it. You can just experience it, and it's got this dreadful feeling around all these places. So it's part of that energy line.
There you go.
This was in 2010 as well. And outside Maastricht, some of the people who took part, that's Toos and her husband, Casper, and some other folks, one of whom I'm going to mention soon. I can't today, but the fellow kneeling has significance, which I've alluded to in terms of somebody who protects me. So I won't say any more than that, but.
All right. Does that cover all the images, or have I missed any?
I'm not sure. I think you said 8, right?
Yeah, I think we've had them all up.
It was interesting that day. You'll notice I have my clerical collar on. We had gone into the building, and I had served the priest there with a notice to get out. And he got so angry, he started screaming at me in Dutch. And then he ran away, which they always do. You see, in our culture, people equate legitimacy with whether you see it on the internet somewhere. And the internet is controlled by the enemy. So no, you're not going to see this stuff on their platform. You will see it if you get close and do work with us, because we're like an iceberg. 99% of the work we do is off cyberspace. It's in direct contact with people. There's tons of evidence. Even on the internet, you go to murderbydecree.com. Everything we've ever referred to here is all documented with statistics, forensic evidence, documents showing the massive death rates in these like native death camps in Canada. All of this stuff, the proof in the real world of forcing highest people in the Vatican out of office. I mean, over and over, the evidence is all there. But we've got to get our heads out of the bubble of looking through the eyes of the oligarchs that are running the system. And so it's partly a perception problem people have, that they think you're going to find proof somewhere. And I like that quote from, I think it was Oscar Wilde. No, I'm sorry, Bertrand Russell. He said, he was asked about proof in philosophy, and he said, if you tell someone something that affirms their view of the world, they don't need proof. They'll automatically believe it. But if you say something that challenges that world view, all the evidence in the world is not going to convince them. Because it's not about evidence, right? I could show you an image of children being ripped apart, and people would not want to believe it because it's so horrible, and would say, that's just an AI image they've created. That can't be happening. We get that all the time, from people. So it's not about proof, because the proof is all out there. The proof is in your own life, every day, looking around at what's happening when you use common sense and reason at, this nightmare that's being created in the world. The issue is how you view the world and whether your head is in the bubble that's been put in around you since the day of your birth, to be dependent and look to the very people causing these crimes as a source of justice or legitimacy or information, right? Don't forget the internet, cyberspace, the whole thing was a military invention, just like television, to control the human mind, give us one source of information and communication that can be controlled. So everyone is thinking the same thoughts, and that's the agenda, to turn us into cogs of a machine mind. That's the ultimate omnicide. And as long as you rely on this medium for ultimate truth, you're going to be led around by the nose, and that's the whole point of that, right? So anyway, it's the way our take on the evidence. Contact us, we'll meet you in person and show you in real life even more evidence, right? Literally within a few days of the verdict of the our court case coming out that had convicted Charles and Pope Prevost and all these guys. What does Charlie do? Goes down from London to Rome and has a ceremony with the Pope, and they exchange titles. Okay, what? They're part of the same club now, apparently. I thought Charles' coronation oath was to defend the Protestant faith in England. There he is at a Catholic mass, and they're giving each other titles. So what they're saying to each other in the world is, we've got each other's backs. We've been convicted. It's an act of fear on their part. They have to cover each other's backs. All these people vanish. Mark Rutte hasn't been seen, the head of NATO. He hasn't been seen in a long time. He's gone off the radar. That's a sign that, with our meager resources, look at the impact it's having. So the question isn't about Kevin, show me what you've done. It's up to you now to get involved, because the more of us who get involved in this, the quicker they're going to come down. We've shown how weak they are. I'm still walking around.
So what do you think about Charles kicking Prince Andrew out of his mansion and the stripping of the titles?
It'll get more and more that way. He's the scapegoat. We're supposed to focus on him, kick him to the curb, and then everyone thinks the problem is solved. I mean, it's the oldest game in the world, and it happens routinely. And that's the advantage. In Art of War, Sun Tzu says you have a great advantage over a bigger enemy because they can only respond in predictable ways. They're bulky and they move slowly. You can outmaneuver them as a guerrilla force, which we've done all the time, especially in like the church occupations. That's why we say the key isn't to necessarily make arrests, because that's not going to stop what's going on. You arrest individuals. It's to take down the system and to disrupt the ceremonies and save children's lives. Now, I mean, the fact that very few people get involved in doing that raises real questions about this. We're not only in a mentally dissociated state, which you have to be to live in this crazy culture. You got to, there's got to be a complete break between what you know is true and what you do every day, right? Otherwise, well, Freud talked about that, right? You got to dissociate to live in society with other people, But what's even worse is the emotional dissociation, where we can hear all this stuff about children being torn to pieces, and it's happening close to you. People don't do anything. Are there thousands of people in the streets protesting the child trafficking and murder? No one will near that. Not only because it's frightening, and it might have happened to us in various ways when we were kids, but we're emotionally detached. We've lost our inherent instinct to protect our young. And what does that say about us, what's happening to us? That's the thing to focus on, not let's get these bad guys and put them in jail. That's not the issue. The issue isn't why these people are doing it. The issue is why are we letting them do it? And we've tried to be a catalyst all the time, a shock, to get people to wake up from their own captivity in the same system, right?
Linda wants to know if Trump is trying to inform people.
Inform? Yeah, I've heard that theory. You see, don't forget, he's no different than anyone in power. Power has its own rules. If he was a humanitarian who wanted to help people, he wouldn't be in the position he's in. He could never have got into that position. I mean, look at my case or any whistleblower. Where do we end up? We try to do the right thing, and I can't even run a room, right? It's like, can't get a job. Nobody, I'm couch surfing often. Okay, if you do the right thing, you get crushed by this world. So the only way you get into that position, like Balzac said, no one can rule guiltlessly, because what do you have to do to get into that position? So if, like a good huckster, he knows how to say the things people need to hear, whether you're a priest, politician, whatever, PR guy. And the issue isn't what they say and do. The issue is, why do people believe? Why do people need to believe a father figure, right? Whether it's Democrats, Republicans, these hats go back and forth all the time to create the illusion of change, but we're still caught in this dependent thing that hasn't changed in 6,000 years. It's a pharaoh, an emperor, king, a president, blah, blah, blah. That's what we ask about in this book. How come people can't govern ourselves? What do we need to do, recover within ourselves to be truly self-governing so this garbage doesn't go on anymore, right?
What dissolves the network? This is from Caroline.
It's hooking all of us. So you start dissolving it within yourself. That's the only way you can be able to fight this thing. There's no point to Spartacus, when he led his rebellion, didn't go and say to the slaves, come on, let's go. They'd be terrified of him. He had a core of gladiators who weren't slaves, and they led the rest at the right moment. And we got to think in those terms. Find a few of us, and that's what we do all the time, who are willing to act, who are broken, and usually break out of the system by getting whacked many times. You don't do it consciously, right? You get beaten up a lot, and there's a shock, like Neo getting unplugged from the Matrix, and he goes down the chute, right? When I look for people like that who've been through that, because they know you don't need to explain anything, like veterans, of a war. You don't need to tell them anything. We all know we've been through the same experience. And those are the ones who will lead the rest. And we talk about that now, my manuals about organizing, that you find that remnant, 2 to 5% usually, of people who have broken already from here. Because if you haven't, you're always saying things like, well, who do we elect next? Or what petition do I sign, right? Or, whatever. Pick your palliative. It's all the same. We got to liberate ourselves. And what's but there's a part two to that, which is really important. It's what Samuel Adams said on his deathbed. He was asked, how did you make the American Revolution? He said, we didn't make it. It made us. So like you start out down a path, but then it changes you because life is always changing. It's dynamic, like God. God evolves. We evolve, right? So when you go through something, you're changed by it because the way we are now, most of us, we can't change anything. We have to go through a whole trauma that brings us out the other end. And working with a number of people who approached me recently who are SRA therapists, they say so-called victims have a great power they don't realize. They've been through the beast. They know it for what it is, and they've survived. And so they have that strength to carry on. Unfortunately, most of them think they're just, crushed and can't do anything, and they're so afraid. But they are the ones who really threaten the system. Those who've been eaten by it and mangled by it. We are the ones who know what its Achilles heel is and how to bring it down. So that's, part of the whole dynamic of how things really change, right?
Agent Orange, how many times has your group been infiltrated?
I've lost count. I know that in Canada, when we were doing our work, there were 4 different organizations I set up between the year 1998, when we did our first tribunal, and just a few years ago, 4 organizations destroyed from within in exactly the same method. That's why I wrote the Whistleblower Manual. I kind of summed up the lessons of that. That's a very important book for people to get when they want to do something on the ground, because it shows you the tactics of the enemy. They're always the same. They bad jacket is the term. They start a whispering campaign against the most effective leaders. That's a whole show on itself. We could talk about that, but that's why we don't set up groups. We set up a cell-based system. So the individual cells don't know what each other are doing. It's like you do during a war or in a police state. You have a cellular system of operating, and you plant seeds everywhere and keep them on the defensive rather than worrying about what they're going to do to us. We take the offensive against them all the time, right?
So Brightmore is saying is the ultimate goal bioconvergence, and Goldie is saying is the ultimate goal taking away people's individual thinking.
To the extent that we have individual thinking, yeah, absolutely. Think like a machine. We're components. I mean, slaves can revolt. Components of a machine can't. And that was the whole point of a lot of this experimentation program related to the Ninth Circle. And over the years, everything that people have documented ad infinitum. I mean, it's all to get to that point. They believe the soul has a biological basis, an electronic basis that can be controlled, right? And that's, I believe, the agenda. But ultimately, how can you know? You can see it from what's happening in your own life. And it's about reclamation, as Indigenous people in Canada say that word all the time. Reclaiming our lost soul as a people, connected to Mother Earth, And that's why the Druidic stuff had such an impact in these latest takedowns of the Ninth Circle, because we're plugging into that now, that innate, thing that has no word. I don't have to explain to you. You're all born with it, right? But that's our power, and we have to get back to it, right? One thing I want to close on, I wonder, Indigenous people in Turtle Island here, North America, had a belief that there was going to be a two-headed white serpent come from the east, and the name for Vatican means serpent, and the two-headed serpent, they warned, the Indigenous people warned their children, is crazy because it has 2 minds. One is vicious and destructive, and the other is kind and welcoming. But they don't know they exist. They're in the same mind, but they're like schizophrenic. They don't know each other exists, like an MPD victim, right? Multiple personality disorder. They said, ignore these people, avoid them, because they'll make you as crazy as they are. And that's a perfect description of our culture. We're of 2 minds. All of us are of 2 minds, and all the time, and 2 hearts. We have to integrate that again. And that's very painful because we're so wedded to the system. But unless we do that, there isn't a future. And it begins here, but it also begins out in the world. The same process back and forth, right? Of changing and losing and learning and carrying on the struggle, right? That's the whole dynamic of what we're doing.